Hello and welcome to Giant Mess, a super sloppy sports and entertainment podcast that's hosted by a giant mess. That's me, the real cinch, Neal Lynch. I'm a single dad who loves to talk Mets baseball, Giants football, movies, and TV. I also like to mix in some funny stories and life lessons along the way. On today's episode, we're going to finally put the 2025 New York Metro season to bed. It's been dead for a good 2 weeks now, but there's some interesting tidbits and stats and factoids that I thought would be good to share and might present a clearer picture of why things went the way they did. We'll also take a look at team fielding, team batting, team pitching, individual accomplishments, where this season ranks in terms of franchise history, where do a lot of our top players rank in terms of single season efforts. And we'll hand out some player grades, and we'll take a look ahead at free agency. Nice little preemie look at free agency, and try to answer 5 of the biggest off-season questions. So without further ado, let's get it started up in here. All right. Obviously, the 2025 Mets season ended 2 weeks ago. Way to be on top of things, Neal. You're welcome. But I did think it would be nice to put a pretty little bow on what was a turd sandwich of a season. You know, we went in depth in terms of reviewing what happened in September. Excruciating detail for anyone who's into that sort of thing. And really outlined, got granular about where we came up short. Runners in scoring position, lack of clutch hitting, 0 for the century in terms of coming from behind when we're trailing in the 8th or after, the never-ending list of pitchers that we went through. And I think the stats, you know, when it's all said and done, when we look back at the stats from the season that we're about to go over, it's pretty clear-cut what needs to happen in the offseason. I feel like we say this every offseason. This is a big offseason. We have some free agents, one of which I would really like to retain. Mets Muse posted this on X. The 2025 Mets joined the 2023 Mets as the only other team in MLB history to miss the playoffs with a $300 million plus payroll. The worst team that money could buy was the 1992 or 93 Mets. Then it became the 2023 Mets, and the 2025 Mets have now joined that rarefied exclusive club. In terms of where this season ranked in franchise history, we actually finished with a worse record than we did in 2019. 2019, we went 86-76, and the 2019 Mets would have made the playoffs in the current format, in the current playoff format. In 2022, the playoffs were expanded to 12 teams per league, 3 division winners, 3 wild cards, which replaced the single game wild card with the best of 3 wild card series. The 2025 Mets had the same record as the 2005 Mets. You know, we had talked in the last episode about when September 1st had come around. The 2025 Mets basically had the same record as the 2024 Mets, but just going in complete opposite directions. We were storming back at the beginning of September 2024 and making the final push, feeling good about our chances. Beginning of September 2025, we were like, all right, let's just try not to collapse. And we did. 2005 Mets, you felt a lot better about that team towards the end of that season than you did the 2025 Mets. 2005 Mets, that was when like David Wright is entrenched as your full-time third base starter. Jose Reyes is entrenched as your starting everyday shortstop. And if it weren't for Braden Looper, maybe I think he blew so many saves that year. And if he hadn't, we'd have I don't know if that we would have made the playoffs, but I hate saying the vibes, but the energy was positive, right? You felt good about that team. At least I did. Like going from what we experienced in, 2001, just coming up short. 2002, it started to unravel. 2003 was just a joke. 2004 sucked. But then 2004, you started to see David Wright and Reyes more. And 2005 was like, okay, that side of the infield, all set. Now we just have to figure out the rest. 2005 also had that crazy moment pre-Linsanity with Lieutenant Corporal Mike Jacobs. It's like, oh my God, we got our future franchise first baseman, and that was 2005, because we ended up getting Carlos Delgado, quite the upgrade. But yeah, we had the same record as the 2005 Mets. Pretty similar records to what the Mets had before my time, from 1970 to 1972, those 3 straight years. The 06 Mets, and I bring up those seasons for a reason. 2005 Mets, it's like, kind of, all right. We're on the up and up. We're doing better than we had the previous 3 seasons. 70, 72, it's like, all right, this is post 69 World Series. The 06 Mets should have gone to the World Series. And the 73 Mets did go to the World Series. 73 Mets actually had an 82-79 record. So they had a worse record than the 2025 Mets, but they finished first in the division. Ended up losing in 7 to the A's in that World Series, and only used 16 pitchers that year in 73. I think we used 16 pitchers in the first 2 weeks of the season. I don't know. What are we thinking? Are we thinking, I don't know. Because you look at the 2005 Mets, no playoffs, but upward trending. 06 Mets should have gone to the World Series. 70-72, kind of like we're hanging in there. Maybe post-World Series hangover, but then go to the World Series in 73. So 2025 Mets missed the playoffs, but 2026, I feel really good about 2026. I know it's crazy to say after, everything that went to shit in 2025, but I actually like our prospects in 2026, especially if we bring back Pete. 1985 Mets deserve better. They finished 98-64. Finished second in the division, only 3 games back, and due to the playoff format being the way it was, where it's like basically division winner versus division winner in the championship series, and that's it. That's that. So I believe we had a better record than the NL West division finisher. Don't quote me, boy. I ain't said shit. Because I remember one of these seasons, it was like, oh, we finished second in the division, but we had a better record. Yeah, 85. We had 98 wins. The Dodgers, who were the NL West division champions, had 95 wins. I mean, that's just. Why did it take us so long to figure that out? Why did it take us so many years to figure out that, like, hey, just because you don't finish in first doesn't mean that you shouldn't get a shot at the playoffs. God damn, that sucks. There were 6 teams per division, 12 teams total in the National League, but the Cardinals were just a thorn in the Mets' side that entire season, and they would be for most of the 80s. But 98 wins and you missed the playoffs. Yankees too, dude. Yankees had 97 wins that year. I mean, the Royals, who ended up going to the World Series that year to face the Cardinals, had 91 wins. What the fuck? Blue Jays in the East had 99 wins. Yankees finished 2 games behind them, missed the playoffs, despite having, they were 6 games better than the Royals, missed the playoffs. So, I didn't really follow the Yankees that closely during the 80s. I was a Mets, was, and will be a Mets fan. But I always figured that the Yankees of the 80s, after that 81 World Series appearance, those were like the dark times. But damn, dude, 97 wins, that's pretty dang good. 87 Mets were 92-70, finished second in the division, 3 games back, no playoffs. And again, 92 wins. They finished 3 games back of the Cardinals, yet again. And they have more wins than the NL West division champion, San Francisco Giants, 90 wins. Mets had more wins than the AL West division champion, Minnesota Twins, who had 85 wins. Blue Jays had 96 wins in the AL East and did miss the playoffs because they were 2 games back of the Tigers. And then who ends up going to the World Series? It's the friggin' Twins with 85 wins. It's like, how did no one catch on to that, man? How did no one catch on to, like, hey, maybe we should expand this shit just a tad? So baseball's a cruel sport. That's for dang sure. The 1990 Mets went 91-71, missed the playoffs. And that was ultimately the year that Davey Johnson got fired. We went 91-71, same exact record as the Cincinnati Reds, who were the NL West division champions, who ended up becoming World Series champions. Red Sox went to the friggin' ALCS with 88 wins as AL East division winner. A's had 103 wins that year and lost to the Reds. World Series. They got swept by the Reds in the World Series. It's a whole new season in the postseason. The 84 Mets went 90-72, same record as the 2015 Mets that went to the World Series. But the 84 Mets finished in second, half a game back in the division. That's another brutal finish. But that was like the beginning of, I guess you technically can't call it a dynasty, but I like to call it a dynasty because that's when the Mets were like, every year we were in the hunt. We were good, playing great baseball, and would have made the playoffs in the expanded format. But the 84 Mets, 1972, 6.5 games back of the Cubs in the East, who had 96 wins, did not have as many wins as the Padres in the NL West. Padres had 92 wins to win it there. But we had more wins than the friggin' Royals. AL West division champs, 84 wins. Royals got swept by the Tigers in the ALCS, it looks like. Tigers had 104 wins that year and won the World Series. But that was the beginning of something good with the Metros, with Keith coming over, Doc coming up, Straw looking good. And then, you add to that in 85 with Carter, and then we're off and running. The 2008 Mets had the same record as the 2024 Mets, 89-73. Second in the division, 3 games back, did not make the playoffs. That was before the expansion, and that was the second straight collapse in a row. 2007 Mets, the 1998 Mets, the 1997 Mets finished 88-74, all missed the playoffs, but yet all finished 1 game better than the 2016 Mets, who went to the playoffs with an 87-75 record. And those were some of my favorite teams. The 97 and 98 Mets were I love the 97 Mets, and the 98 Mets, obviously you add Piazza in the mix and you're feeling really good about your chances. 99 we barely got in, and 2000 we barely got in. Was it 2000 we barely got in? No. 2025 Mets. The 2025 Mets finished 13th in runs scored in franchise history. It's 2 runs lower than 2024, which you want to talk about a surprising statistic, because think of the season that Juan Soto had, despite what people were saying about Pete Alonso in the second half of the season, he was putting up career numbers. You look at, there's some advanced barrel rates and velocity type statistics, but most of his metrics offensively were better than they were in 2019, which was one of his best seasons, if not his best season, his rookie year. Francisco Lindor with a 30-30 season. Brandon Nimmo put up career highs, 2 runs lower than last year. Without looking too deep into it, personally, it's because Mark Vientos fell off and Francisco Alvarez fell off. Those were 2 of our key, Alvarez not so much in 2024, but was offensively one of our better hitters in 2023. Vientos had a breakout year in 2024. Well, I don't know if we're going to get into those statistics, but his 2024 postseason is like the second best in franchise history or something like that. So he took a big step back. He was dealing with injuries. Marte wasn't exactly where we needed him to be. McNeil, subpar. When you're looking at the core, and I don't even know if I put McNeil in the core anymore, but, Soto, Lindor, Alonso, Nimmo putting up big-time numbers, and you still have 2 runs lower than 2024. That means your supporting cast didn't step up and wasn't able to contribute like they did in the previous season. You think about like Iglesias, Candelita last year, he had career numbers, and he was kind of an afterthought at the beginning of the season, just kind of, see what you got, and then he ended up becoming such a vital part of the roster down the stretch. Jesse Winker getting hurt for pretty much the entire season. When we had everyone healthy, April, May, half of June, it's like I repeatedly was just thinking to myself and saying out loud to anyone that would listen, this is like one of my favorite teams, if not my favorite Mets team, just because of how loaded we were across the board, not just from a hitting standpoint, but from a pitching standpoint. It's just like we had an answer for everything. We could go Jesse Winker, DH, lefty on righty, lefty comes in, we can go to Marte or Vientos. Like we just had it seemed like we had an answer for everything. And then the injuries started to pile up. We went from we're the most loaded deep roster to calling all wannabe professionals report to open tryouts. Like we just couldn't even, and we couldn't, and the trade deadline didn't pay off either. So we actually allowed less runs than the 2006 Mets and the 2000 Mets. How's that for blowing your mind? It's like, hold up. We didn't even have pitching for a solid 2 months there where it was like every other day is a bullpen game, and we have guys coming up that we've never heard of before pitching extensively, and pitching was our downfall this year, but yet less runs than 2006 and 2000 when 2000 we went to the World Series. 2006 we should have gone, and the 2007 Mets, and tied with the 2008 Mets. Again, 2007 Mets, 2008 Mets probably should have made the playoffs and would have in the current format. So as much as we want to get on the pitching, the 2006 offense, the 2007, 2008 offenses, Beltran, Wright, Delgado, Reyes. Those were stacked as well. 2000 Mets, you have Ventura. Did you have Ventura? Or did Ventura move on? Piazza, Zeal, but I don't feel like the 2000 Mets were that stacked either. So interesting. The 2025 Mets, we used the second most batters in franchise history, which, again, that's another kind of shocking stat. We always talk about, we obviously use the most pitchers in franchise history, but the most batters in franchise history is also very interesting. And I think that has to go along with, McNeil was banged up towards the beginning of the season, missed a lot of time. Siri went down. Tyrone Taylor was hurt. We acquire Cedric Mullins. Acuna's in the mix. Vientos, Mauricio, Jared Young. Alvarez was hurt. Torrens was hurt, so we bring up Senger. Once you get down to it, I think injuries couldn't overcome the injuries. In terms of single season rankings and franchise history, Juan Soto was tied for 4th in his 2025 season with Carlos Beltran in offensive WAR. He was 4th in runs scored and 3rd in home runs. So top 5 single season effort from Juan Soto in terms of offensive WAR, runs scored, and home runs. Lindor was tied for 6th in runs scored with Lance Johnson, 1996. I really dug Lance Johnson, dude. Really wish he could have stuck around for much longer. I don't think he put up like crazy numbers, but I just felt like he was the quintessential leadoff guy, center fielder, WAR number 1, cool name. Like the way he played, but Alonso, Peter Morgan Alonso, was tied for 4th in total bases with Lance Johnson, 1996, and Jose Reyes, 2008. He was tied for 5th in doubles with Edgardo Alfonso in the 99 season, Hojo Howard Johnson in 1989, and David Wright in 2012. And in his 2025 campaign, he was tied for 10th in home runs with Carlos Delgado in that 2006 season, Carlos Delgado in that 2008 season, Howard Johnson in 91, and Michael Piazza in 2000. Listen, he was playing at an unbelievable level in the first 2 to 3 months, to the point where there was serious talk about him being an MVP. He was in consideration, and then he kind of fell off. I just think about that stat, the one stat that someone rattled off on X, where it was like he has the same WAR as Cedric Mullins. I was like, what? No way. During that stretch that he had, this team goes through it sometimes. It's just like it's infectious. The slumps and the streaks, the highs and the lows. It's like it really is. We're just like one organism. Like, all right, you are going through it, and now you gave whatever you got to him, and then you guys shared a water bottle. Now no one can hit. It's just like, fuck, man. We need to quarantine y'all. Good Fundies Brian at Good Fundies said, I knew Pete Alonso had a great year. I did not know that he had his best ever year by batted ball metrics. So this is what I had mentioned before. Alonso set a career high in exit velo, XBA, X-Sluggo and XWOBPA, barrel percentage, and barrel per plate appearance, all surpassing his sublime 2019 baseball stats. Expected batting average is XBA, and X-Sluggo, slugging percentage, is expected. XWOBA is that's a lot of letters, dude. Expected weighted on base average. Offensively, I thought he had a great year. Would you like him to be a little more clutch? It's tough to ask him to be more clutch than he already is, because you look across the board in terms of in franchise history, how many clutch hits and home runs he's had for this team, and it's up there, if not the best. Is he getting more opportunities than other players? Possibly. So that's something I'd have to look into, is like, are we seeing him in those situations way more than other players? And it's more of a volume thing. And I think, down the stretch, it just wasn't quite the same. Although, I don't know, even in that, towards the end, there's plenty of big hits and big home runs. So I think what frustrates me, at least, and probably a lot of Mets fans, is that in these clutch situations or opportunities, and I mentioned this in the last episode that we did reviewing September, is not getting your bat on the ball with runners in scoring position. Just not making contact. Looking at a third strike is just inexcusable, but swinging and missing third strike, just the strikeouts. It's one thing, I mean, grounding in double play is actually worse. But I'd rather, at least you're putting the ball in play and you're forcing the defense to make a play. So you'd rather see it grounded into double play than a strikeout, because at least you're giving it a chance. But striking out, it happened way too much this season, way too much. Spent 65 days in first. Our biggest lead was 5.5, and that was on June 12th. And then we ended up 13 games back. 21 games over 500, and we only had one game under 500 on April 1st. Our longest win streak was 7, from April 17th to April 23rd, and then from July 20th to July 27th. Yeah, I think that's when we swept the Phillies at home, was towards the end of July, and we're like, here we go. This is it. This is the turning point. And then we just shit the bed in August. Not much better in September. Our longest losing streak came at the worst possible time. It was 8 games, and it was from September 6th to September 13th. The most runs allowed was 12 on June 29th and also August 3rd. Most runs scored was 19, and that was April 28th and August 29th. Longest game was 13 innings. We were shut out by the opponent 8 times. We shut out the opponent 9 times. We had 35 comeback wins. Our largest comeback was when we were down by 5. I think that was against the Cubs, our last Cubs series in September. We had 36 blown leads, and our largest blown lead was 6. So it's kind of interesting that you can have 35 comeback wins, and none of them took place in the 8th inning or after. We led the NL East by 5.5 games. And we actually led the division on August 2nd. Wow, wee-wah. We were so good at home, 49-32, 605 winning percentage, and we were 34-47 on the road. It's like the complete opposite on the road. 420 winning percentage. Dudes. Our best month was April in terms of winning percentage. We only allowed 84 runs in April. Wow. And we allowed almost twice that in August. Holy crap. 704 winning percentage in April. Just felt like we could do no wrong. Just clicking on all cylinders. May, kind of a step back, but still very nice. June, it starts to crater. July was actually our second best month, believe it or not. Everyone likes to point to since June 13th. I don't know, 14-10 in July. 583 winning percentage. That's good enough to get you into the second season, the postseason, but just a horrendous August and a not much better September. 55-42 in the first half, 28-37 in the second half. Blech. Losing record in extra inning games, 23-26 in one-run games. I think that's where an area that we really excelled in 2024 and we just didn't in 2025. I mean, just in reviewing September alone, how many one-run games were there that were ripe for the taking? You had guys on base to tie it up or take the lead and just couldn't come through. We were 31-21 in blowouts, so that's 5+ runs, and 24-24 in interleague play. 5-8 against Atlanta. Unbelievable. It's just not taking care of business. 5-8 versus the Braves, a Braves team that was just decimated and depleted by injury. Didn't have, was not fully stocked. 5-8, you can't have that happen against a team that was just not themselves and ended up, I think they finished below 500. Baltimore's another team that, of course, last year made the playoffs. This year, not so much. Losing 2 or 3 to them. Only going for, we had a 4-2 record against the Cubs, which is nice. Not sweeping the White Sox sucked. 2-4 against the Reds. 6-7 against the Marlins. We actually had a winning record against. Our best record was against the Phillies and Nats. But even the Nationals, like 7-6 against the Nationals, they were just not good this year. And 2-4 against the Pirates. We had the 9th best record at home in Major League Baseball. 6th best record in the National League. All teams ahead of us are in the playoffs. The 9th worst record at home in Major League Baseball. 5th worst in the National League. Now hold up. Wait a second. I think I meant to put away. So rewind, erase. Everyone back to 1. Retake. I believe I meant to say the 9th worst record away. For our away record was the 9th worst in the majors and 5th worst in the National League. That makes the most sense. After a day off, we had the 6th best record in all of professional baseball. We had the 3rd best winning percentage in Major League Baseball when at a rest disadvantage, which is wild. But where did we come up short? 25-27 within the division. That goes back to not taking care of business against the Braves and the Nationals and the Marlins. 13th worst in the majors and 7th worst in the National League. So yeah, that's the key, right? You think about all the seasons where we did go to the postseason, we took care of biz within the division. And it's not like we had this was not a year in which it was a crazy competitive division. It just wasn't. Like the Phillies were your only real competition, and you actually had a better record against them. So outside the division in the National League, pretty good. Within the division, not great. Interleague, also not great. And we actually had a higher margin of victory than the Reds. So I guess if it comes down to that part of the tiebreaker, like if head-to-head, we split it 3-3 instead of the Reds owning the series 4-2, and we split it 3-3. Everything else is even. I guess they would go by margin of victory, possibly. I forget where that sits in the tiebreaker, but if that was the case, we would have edged them out. So let's talk about batting and hitting-wise. We had the 9th most runs scored per game, 9th most total runs scored, and the 9th most RBIs. Only one other team in the top 10 did not make the playoffs. And those were the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Arizona Diamondbacks, dude. You're going to hear their name mentioned a lot in terms of offensively. Batting-wise, it's a top 10 team. We were 8th in slugging. We were one of 3 teams in the top 10 to not make the playoffs. The other 2 teams that were in the top 10 in slugging percentage across the majors, the Diamondbacks and the Sacramento A's. Metros had the 6th highest on-base percentage. We were one of 2 teams to not make the playoffs. The other one, you guessed it, those D-backs from Arizona. We were 6th in OPS Again, we were one of two teams to not make the playoffs, the Diamondbacks and the A's. We were fourth in OPS plus. Again, the Diamondbacks and A's were the other two teams that did not make the playoffs of the top 10. We were fifth in home runs. We were one of three teams in the top 10 to not make the playoffs. The other three, one of four teams. The other three were the A's, Diamondbacks, and Angels. We were fifth in stolen bases. Four of the top 10 were not in the playoffs. Rays, Marlins, Rangers, and Nationals. Only caught stealing 18 times, which was the second fewest behind the Tigers. So the Tigers had less times caught stealing, but we had 86 more stolen bases than the Tigers. Our stolen base percentage this season was unreal, and that's a huge reason why Anton Richardson was retained as first base coach, and pretty much the whole rest of the staff, with the exception of Carlos Mendoza, was let go. We were fifth in walks thanks to Juan Soto, and we were one of four teams in the top 10 to not make the playoffs. One of five teams, Braves, Giants, Diamondbacks, and Pirates. Yeah, of those teams, I think the Giants and Diamondbacks were in the mix in terms of the wild card race. We were fifth in sacrifice flies. We were one of three teams to not make the playoffs in the top 10. The Diamondbacks and Giants were the other two. Fourth in double plays grounded into. 7 of the top 10 didn't make the playoffs. So, again, you don't want to strike out with ducks on the pond. You also don't want to hit into a double play. I feel like we saw a lot of that out of Starling Marte, a lot of that out of Pete. As good of an offensive year as he had, one of the best single seasons in franchise history, he did ground into a ton of double plays. We were also fourth in hit by pitch, keeping that tradition strong. And we were third in runners left on base. So I think you can get a sense of where we're coming up short. The fact that you have guys putting up career years, putting up top 5, top 10 single seasons in franchise history, multiple guys, 3, 4, Soto, Lindor, Alonso, Nimmo, but yet total runs less than you had in 2024 because you're not getting contributions from your other 4 or 5 position players or DH, but also not knocking guys in. There was a stretch, we've said this before, but there was a stretch where Soto, as great a year as he had, there was a very extended period where he's hitting below 200 with runners in scoring position. And it's just like, you've seen it in the playoffs. It all washes out in the playoffs. Like the teams that are able to manufacture runs, that get guys on and are able to score them, they usually go far. So I don't think hitting was the biggest issue. Clutch hitting was an issue for sure. Pitching wise, the 2025 Mets were tied for the most pitchers used with the Braves. So spin zone, silver lining, if you want to say, like that in a weird way, is a positive that we were able to go through so many pitchers and yet still had a better record than the Braves, if you want to go that route. Now, they had way more injuries to their starting lineup as well and to their batting arsenal. But the fact that we used just as many pitchers and ended up where we did, pretty decent accomplishment. 6 of the top 10 teams in terms of pitchers used didn't make the playoffs. So usually that's a pretty good indicator that you're not going to go far when you have to go through that many arms. We actually ended up right around the league average in ERA, which was also another surprising stat. League average is 4.15, and our ERA was 4.03. We were also right around the league average in hits, runs, and earned runs. I forget what month it was. I want to say it was July. We had a winning record. It was our second best record for a month of 2025. And I think that's when I gave kudos to both Carlos Mendoza and David Stearns for being able to weather the storm and to find ways to plug guys in, call guys up, shift and manipulate, massage, and work the roster daily, if not daily, a few times a day. Bringing guys up, calling them out, designating, sending down, calling up. It was the amount of juggling that they had to do during July. And I think maybe July was not a false positive, but a mirage in a sense. Like they thought, oh, well, we're winning and we're able to juggle and we just need to keep it up. And then it came back to haunt us in August. And, we'll get to what some other people were saying, but, if you didn't have that winning period in July, maybe you would have called up McLean and Tong and Sproat earlier, and we wouldn't have got into the situation that we got into in August. Mets pitching in 2025 allowed the second fewest home runs behind the Giants, so that's also, to me, I take that as a positive. We did have the seventh most walks, though, and the seventh worst whip. So that's walks and hits per innings pitched. So, yeah, walks were a huge issue. And walks, home runs are painful, but it's ripping off the Band-Aid. Walks is like a slow death. It's just, walk the leadoff guy, he's probably going to score. And when you're not giving, walk, it's the flip side of striking out, having your hitters strike out. Your pitchers, when they walk batters, they're not giving your defense an opportunity to make a play. And then when they're asked to make a play, it can get dicey because they're not engaged. We had the sixth most wild pitches and the sixth lowest strikeouts per walk ratio, the second most hits batsman, but we did strand the most runners. We had the highest number of runners left on base. So we were able to get out of a ton of jams in 2025. The problem is, the issue is you should not have gotten those jams in the first place because you couldn't locate. If our pitchers were better at locating, getting ahead in the count, not working from behind, not throwing, beyond their pitch count in the first 4 innings. I mean, how many single innings did you see this season where our starting pitchers going into 20 and 30 pitches? It's like, can't happen. And it's because you're not locating and not forcing the hitter to swing. You got to be competitive. Challenge hitters. Don't pitch scared. So I'd like to see us be more aggressive on the mound, on the bump this season. Meek Phil from Barstool Sports had a great post on X that I think you want another mind-blowing stat? You got one. Meek Phil said, Griffin Canning was fourth on the Mets in innings pitched. He blew his Achilles out on June 26th. His season was done before July. He was fourth in innings pitched. Tyler McGill was fifth on the Mets in innings pitched. He blew out his elbow on June 14th. So 2 of our starting pitchers went down for the season before we could even sniff July, and they were 4th and 5th respectively in innings pitched. So that just gives you a small sample size of what David Stearns and the Mets front office is up against in this offseason. And I think plenty of people, from fans to reporters, columnists, whoever, everyone's in agreement. Like this whole approach that we took in coming into the 2024 season and into the 2025 season, maybe we don't go that route this year. Not to say that you need to go out and make a huge splash. It's just like, okay, we went for the huge splash in 2022 and 2023 with Scherzer and Verlander, and it didn't really pay off. Chris Bassett did pay off. So we need more Chris Bassett's and less Severinos and Clay Holmes, and not to throw shade at Clay Holmes because I think he performed well above our expectations. I mean, obviously it caught up to him in the second half, but you have to feel good about him in year 2 of being a starter. Manaeus, that was really disappointing, and you're hoping that it was just a fluke because of the injuries and coming back from that. But I would say let's not overpay for a pitcher in their late 30s, early 40s. But, can you get, there's got to be a something within that range. Like the far range is overpaying for a pitcher who's past his prime in his late 30s, early 40s, right? We don't want to do that. But we also don't want to hand out these 1-year $10 to $15 million contract to a guy who's been cast aside, similar to a Luis Severino, or let's find something in the middle there. Let's find someone who's either in their prime or about to hit their prime, not someone who's past their prime, not someone who's peaked. In terms of wins above average by position, in terms of so wins above average by position, I thought this was a cool stat, and it really highlights where our areas of need are. All pitchers were 22nd. Our starting pitchers were 23rd. 23rd for starting pitchers. So starting pitchers, the fact that 2 of the 5 lead in innings pitched and we're done before the All-Star break. That's like priority numero uno, behind maybe, obviously re-signing Pete Alonso. Relief pitchers were actually 19th. We talked about it. The starters threw the least amount of innings pitched amongst all teams in the majors this season, and our relief pitchers threw the most innings pitched amongst all teams. So as much as we like to discredit the bullpen and say, they didn't come through, you can only get away with that for so long. Again, July, I think that July period was misleading. It was like, I don't know if Mendoza and Stearns just were like, let's just ride out the storm and survive, and it'll all turn around in August, and we'll get so-and-so back and so-and-so back, and we won't do it, but it didn't happen. I guess the thought was, Manaea will come back, and Senga will come back, and McGill will come back, and Frankie Montas will come back, and they'll all come back, and they'll all perform, and none of that came to fruition. Honestly though, what are the odds? What are the odds that not one of those guys was going to pan out? Not one of those guys was going to step up and pitch well? The probability on that is just so low, but it happened. So it's more of a freaky, fluky thing. I think if we didn't have the injuries we did, there's no way we're finishing 83-79, missing the playoffs. There's just no way. In terms of wins above average by position, non-pitchers, 4th. So yeah, it's the pitching. Catchers, we were 9th in wins above average. Luis Torrens, you want to talk, people like to give the current administration a lot of shit. Luis Torrens was a really nice pickup. That guy, I'm shocked that people still try and steal bases on him. First base, we're 7th. So as much as we like to, there's a huge, my mom included, I cannot believe the amount of shit she gives Pete Alonso. It's just, can we stop with this? I just don't understand it. I guess he just rubs people the wrong way for whatever reason, but I love the guy. And 7th. We'll get to what the free agent market looks like, but are there 6 other guys that you would want in place to replace Alonso? I don't really see it. Second base, we were 7th, which is somewhat surprising because McNeil had somewhat of a down year, but then again, Brett Beatty had a career year, and people forget that we lost him for the last week of the season, last week or 2 weeks of the season. So do things play out differently if he doesn't get injured? Probably. So second base, McNeil's there. Acuna's a nice defensive replacement in the later innings. I saw someone post, they were like, enough of this moving Beatty back and forth from 3rd to 2nd. I don't let him start at 3rd and then deal Vientos, especially if Alonso's going to be your DH. But third base, 15th. So, and people are going to point to Vientos and say that that's the reason why it's 15 and not 7th. And Mauricio didn't really add much either at third base. So I think the consensus right now is Beatty starts at 3rd. Just let him be your everyday third baseman. McNeil's your everyday second baseman. And then Acuna's utility. And then I guess Mauricio and Vientos are the odd guys out. You have to think, though, Mauricio probably has the edge over Vientos because he's a little bit better defensively. Shortstop, you were 6th in wins above average. Left field, you were 7th. Center field, you were 21st. That's not shocking or surprising at all. I don't think we should resign Cedric Mullins. Series gone. Leaves you with just Tyrone Taylor. Has he shown enough to be your everyday starting center fielder? I would not feel confident in that. I view him, best case scenario, he's your defensive replacement. Pinch hitter, pitch runner. Right field, 2nd, wins above average, Juan Soto. Hell yeah. Offensively, all positions, so left, center, and right, we were 6th in wins above average. So it really is just finding that piece in center field to round it out. DH is 15th, and then pitch hitter was actually 5th and wins above average. And that's goes back to what I was saying about earlier on in the season, being so psyched and pumped about the fact that we were just loaded offensively, from top to bottom, and a lot of great bats on the bench. Do you bring back Jesse Winker? I don't know. I mean, that was just such a disappointment. When he was in the lineup, when he was healthy and in the mix, he would produce. You don't want to oversimplify it, but it's like if Pete could just come around on being the DH, they've played around with the idea of Vientos being this first baseman, but it sounds like they're going back on that now. So if you do move Pete to DH, Beatty's at third, and then you have to find your defensive first baseman who's not going to cost you an arm and a leg and who is average offensively, and then a center fielder. Honestly, I would be fine if we just get a center fielder. if we don't, the infield's the infield. I think we'll figure it out. I don't think that was the issue. The issue was you're getting zero production out of your center field position. So center fielder, starting pitcher, center fielder, and re-sign Pete, obviously. In terms of defense and fielding, we had the 6th worst defensive efficiency. Only 2 other teams in the bottom 10 made the playoffs. The Red Sox and the Phillies. And spoiler alert, neither of them are still in the playoffs. So that was, I think, the biggest surprise from this season was how poor we played defensively. Even Lindor is usually so sure-handed. He had a lot of errors. Pete, we talked about it when we were recapping September. He had the worst defensive year of his career. Not great when he's trying to make a point and prove that he can be an everyday first baseman and not be a liability there. Vientos and Mauricio at third were not great. Soto had kind of an off year. Just a lot of misplays ended up costing us, especially down the stretch. You would think, okay, maybe that could happen in the beginning parts of the year. Just you're warming up to everything. Start of a new season, the different pace from spring training, getting a good read on balls earlier on. But man, to have the kind of defense we did down the stretch was just egregious. In terms of individual fielding, Luis Torrens, we talked about it. He was first in caught stealing percentage, 40.8% of stolen base attempts. He caught the ace. Very happy to have him in the mix. And, there were some offensive spurts there from Luis. I like our catching unit, catcher's room, but you do have to wonder if it's going to continue like this because Alvarez can be obviously not as good as Luis Torrens behind the plate, but he's offensively better. And that's kind of what, the dilemma that Mendoza got into when push came to shove towards the end of the season. It's like, well, do I go with an all defensive lineup? Do I go with an all offensive lineup? Are we trying to score runs? Are we trying to save runs? What are we trying to do here? And could not find the right mix or balance. It's almost like when you have too many options, you have no options. It's almost better that when you don't have the option, because you don't have to stress and worry, and it's just like, this is what we're going with. But then when you do have the option, you start to question yourself. It's like, well, would this be better? What is it called? There's a phrase for it. I'm not figuring it out. Something of choice. I wonder if that's the case with the catcher's room. It's like, okay, this team is known for stealing bases, so we want Torrens behind the dish. This team, not so great stealing bases, but pitching is a tad better, so we're going to go with Alvarez. Pete Alonso was tied for the most errors as a first baseman. Ironically, though, he had the most errors, but he had the 4th highest range factor at first base. So that is not surprising to me. I think he can get to a lot of balls. It's just a matter of once he gets the ball, is he able to make the throw to first or catch the ball? Because there have been a few times, at least in the last couple of weeks, where he's diving for a ball, he gets his mitt on it, but can't come up with it cleanly. Brett Beatty had the highest range factor at third. The highest range factor per 9 innings at third. I wouldn't hate if they just make the move and they say, yeah, Beatty, you're a third baseman. The way that Lindor starts every single game of the 162 games during a season at short, and Juan Soto did that in right, and Pete did it at first. We would like to have that from Brett Beatty at third. Can Jeff McNeil give you that at second? Probably not. Brandon Nimmo had the second highest fielding percentage as a left fielder. I do worry about his arm, and I guess that and that's a major reason why he's not still in center field, because I don't know, he probably obviously doesn't have the same range factor as a Juan Lagares or Tyrone Taylor, but pretty sure-handed, but his arm too. So I think it was a range in his arm that relegated him to left. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's painful to watch, but anytime there's a sac fly opportunity for the opponent and he's in left, it's just like, we're not throwing this guy out. That's where Starling Marte would come in handy. But again, Starling Marte, free agent. I don't think he's going to come back. Tyrone Taylor was tied for second in assists in center field, and he had the fifth highest range factor per 9 innings in center field. One of those situations where it's like, do you just roll the dice and you say, all right, Tyrone, no more platooning. You're our guy in center. Do you give him that vote of confidence, seeing that he gave you a little bit of a spark when he came back from the injury coming down the stretch? Or is it really a case of tight ball game, we're up by 1, we want to preserve the lead, get the win, and you stick him in center? That's how I view him contributing to the 2026 Mets. Juan Soto was 5th in assists as a right fielder and 3rd in fielding percentage. So, I mean, everyone likes to point to the really bad looking misplays and errors for Juan Soto, but he's and when it's bad, but it's rare. I guess that's the point. Is I don't view him as a liability in right field. So I think you got that on lock and right. If you want to possibly think about a defensive replacement for left, it's like, I'm just trying to think about moves to make here. So in 2026, obviously every day starting center fielder, Tyrone Taylor is your backup defensive replacement. Nimmo's your starter in left. Who's your defensive replacement now that Marte is probably on the outs? Soto's rock steady out and right. David Peterson was 4th in range factor per 9 and per game. He had 1,000 fielding percentage as a pitcher that was tied for first across all of Major League Baseball. So you got to field your position, dude. And he did it. DP did it. He did the thing. In terms of individual batting, Juan Soto, I mean, oh my God, look at this laundry list of accomplishments. Juan Soto was 7th in WAR for position players, 3rd in offensive WAR, 3rd in on-base percentage, 1st in the National League, 7th in OPS, 5th in adjusted OPS plus, which is adjusted to the ballpark, 3rd in times on base, 7th in home runs, 8th in at-bats per home run. He averaged 13.4 at-bats per home run. He was 3rd in runs scored, 10th in RBIs, 1st in walks by a very large margin. He was tied for 4th in stolen bases, which is something that we haven't seen in his career. And you add that into the mix, my God, we got a good one. He was 1st in the National League in stolen bases, 5th in runs created, 6th in offensive winning percentage. So if you basically cloned Juan Soto 7 times, 8 Juan Sotos in the field and batting, you'd have a 726 winning percentage. That's my favorite stat. That is by far my favorite stat. Let's just clone Juan Soto. Is that illegal? Let's look into that. Soto was 10th in stolen base percentage. He had a stolen base percentage that was 90 plus. Luis Angel Acuna was 4th at 94%. So, yeah, that's kind of where Acuna's wheelhouse is. That's where he's going to be the most. That's where he's going to contribute the most and have the most impact is, late inning pinch runner to get that stolen base. And defensively, he's he's really solid too. Incredible range, more range than McNeil, obviously. So late inning defensive replacement, pinch runner. That's where he's at right now. And then hopefully the batting will come around. And then Soto was third in win probability added. I mean, just an incredible year. One of his best seasons, if not his best season. A lot of career highs. Obviously kind of got off to a slow start, started to heat up, and had 2 or 3 months where he was the best hitter in all baseball. So I'm not mad. I'm still not mad about that deal. I don't know how anyone can be mad about that deal. Just because dollars doesn't necessarily translate to like it's not like, oh, I have more money now, so now like my powers are enhanced. It's just this not this automatic translation. You can sit here and argue about worth and value and all that, but I'd be a lot more bummed if he pulled a Jason Bay or some shit where he's like not even a league average player. That would be horrendous. So I am so happy he's with the Mets. The thought here, the only reservation I have is like, is this going to turn into a Mike Trout situation where it's like, Mike Trout's the best player in baseball. He did this, and this, and he's like this, and has this accomplishment, and is top 5 and top 1 and the most and this. And the Angels are 77 and 84. It's just like, oh, fuck. Like, I don't want that to happen. That's not part of the deal. Francisco Lindor finished 7th in offensive WAR, 4th in runs scored. He was tied for 10th in hits and tied for 10th in times on base. So pretty solid season from Francisco. The knock on him, despite what the numbers say at the end of this journey, at the end of each season, he goes through some really horrendous slumps. We mentioned it a couple times in a lot of these monthly reviews that I do. My God, it's like 0 for 26, 0 for 27, 0 for 28. We're talking about that happens like 2, 3, maybe 4 times a season. But then he gets white hot where he is just taking over games. So from what I gather, that's just like, that's what Francisco, it's not unusual for him. That's what he's done throughout his career. And it's just something you have to live with it. Live by the sword, die by the sword. Peter Alonso, 5th in total bases. Tied for 3rd in doubles. He led the National League in doubles. 8th in home runs. Tied for 5th in extra base hits. 9th in adjusted OPS plus, that's adjusted to the ballpark. 2nd in RBIs. 6th in win probability added. But he did ground into the 2nd most double plays in all of Major League Baseball. Ooh, the twin killing. That'll get you. Pitcher's best friend. My God. As a former pitcher, there are certain things that really get my noodle stiff. That really excite me and that I love about being a pitcher. And one is, do you like strikeout looking versus strikeout swinging? Which one do you like better, Neal? Great question. Strikeout looking is pretty sweet, I think, because it's just like the guy that, like, you're not even, whoa, so, okay. Can I help you with anything? But strikeout swinging is pretty decent too. I guess it goes strikeout looking, then strikeout swinging, then grounding into a double play. Oh, God, that feels so good. What's even, in terms of like turning the double play yourself, also very good. I do like that a lot. Double play in which you, the pitcher, are covering first, also pretty sweet, because that shows like, hey, like I had to do a lot on that play. I had to throw the ball. I had to get my ass over to first base and then become a first baseman. Yeah, the grounding and the double plays, oof, it's tough. Gotta work on that, but I don't know. I thought it was a good season. I thought it was one of the better seasons from Alonso from an offensive standpoint. Defense was not quite there, and I think that might be the end of the road for him in terms of playing first base. It seems like Stearns is not going to put up with it. Many are saying that's the reason why he wasn't signed by anyone else last season, is because he insisted on playing first, and everyone else was like, nah, dude, you're a DH, and we're not going to pay you what you want to be a DH. I still think it's worth it offensively. Individual pitching. accomplishments. Good Fundies Brian at Good Fundies on September 29th posted on X. Folks, I promise you, when we look back at 2025 in the future, which I'm currently doing, nobody will be wondering why the Mets fell short. Only 2 starting pitchers made it to 160 innings pitched. Manaea, Senga, Miguel, and Canning were hurt. We needed to call in 3 rookies down the stretch. It's not complicated or a moral failing of the players. I still think, the mojo wasn't there. The energy wasn't there. The enthusiasm wasn't there. The body language was shit. It just didn't seem like I didn't pick up on that drive, that will to win. Didn't really get that in the majority of games. I wouldn't say it completely disappeared, but it was just like, guys, we're still in this game. Opportunity to win, and it's just like, see, shaking your head, putting your head down, a lot of frustrated looks around the way. So many injuries to our starting pitching, to our relief pitching, losing Reed Garrett. I know he got off to a incredible start where he's like gonna in consideration to be an all-star, and then I think the injuries caught up to him, and really poor second half, and then obviously season ending injury. David Peterson was 3rd in home runs allowed per 9 innings. Clay Holmes was 9th in home runs allowed per 9 innings. And those were our 2 best pitchers. Peterson was an all-star, believe it or not. Outstanding first half. A lot of people are citing that this is the most innings pitched that he's had in a season in his career. And so he hit a wall. That's understandable. It's kind of bullshit for me to bring up my own personal experience. But I went from being a starting pitcher in high school where it's like I can go the full, because the games in high school are 7 innings. So it's like I complete game after complete game after complete game, most outings. Going from that to, okay, now I'm in college and I'm not in the starting rotation, but I'm a spot starter, but I'm primarily used for middle relief, like here and there, an inning or two, a batter or two. Like to go from predominantly middle relief to, okay, now you got to give us 7 innings. It was like, you don't have that the same kind of endurance that you did before. Giggity. At Sleeper Mets on X said, you can say what you want about the 2025 season, but someone who received too much hate was Clay Holmes, and I agree. Holmes was brought to the Mets as a number 4 to 5 pitcher back end, but he's doing exactly what his job was. His 3.53 ERA was 9th in the National League. Congrats on the outstanding season. And we can applaud that. Round of applause. Doesn't that exceed your expectations, or at least meet your expectations? He was a very big question mark coming into the season. This is his first season as a starter, the most innings pitched he's ever thrown in his career. So I feel good about having him in the rotation next season. People want to get down on him, but man, you want to talk about dependability in terms of consistency. He was our most consistent pitcher. Peterson, great first half, horrific second half. Clay Holmes was as close to consistent as you can get, where it's like, okay, good first half, average to subpar second half. It wasn't as wildly different as David Peterson's was. Edwin Diaz was 10th in win probability added. Mets have a very crucial decision. Obviously, when it comes to free agency, Pete Alonso is your top priority, and that's the one that you're going to go after, and Diaz is second. I'm sure there's a contingency of Mets fans out there that are like, no, false, wrong, other way around. Diaz is way more valuable. But part of me thinks, was that the reason why they got Helsley at the trade deadline last year? It was like they wanted to kind of indoctrinate him and then, sign him at a cheaper rate to become the closer in 2026, which I really hope that's not the case, but kind of see, was that part of the plan? Diaz, I think this is probably his second best season as a Met. Third best. 2022 is like his best season, right? 2024 was really good. 2025 was still, I still don't, 2022, it was like he could do no wrong. 2024 was like a little bit of uneasy, and 2025 was, I guess, a little less uneasy. But do I still feel like, oh, he's coming in, we got this on lock? I don't know, dude. I still It can be tough to watch sometimes. In terms of our rookies, Nolan McLean was tied for 6th in WAR. Only pitched 8 games, but to be 6th in WAR after only 8 games, ooh, baby, that's gotta light a fire and kick the tires. Eric Cross at Eric Cross MLB said the 15 most impressive rookies of 2025. He did a countdown. Nolan McLean came in 4th, the 4th most impressive rookie. 8 games started, 48 innings pitched, 2.06 ERA, 1.04 whip, 8.5% walks percentage, and 30.3% K percentage. McLean dominated and looked like a future frontline starting pitcher right away. The only reason he's not higher is because he only had 48 innings pitched. And that's the only thing that is really holding us back from anointing him and crowning his ass, is this idea that can he put it together and sustain it for an entire season over 30 starts? And if he can, hallelujah, we're going to be in a good spot. Luis Stearns, 1.21 WAR. Pete Alonso, 3.43 WAR. Acuna had a .57, but played in 2 more games than McNeil. And Brett Baty had a 3.10 WAR, played 5 more games than Vientos, who had a negative .2 WAR, which I still can't wrap my head around how that's possible, because it didn't feel like he played all that bad. Lindor had almost a 6 WAR. Nimmo had a lower WAR than Baty at 2.88. Tyrone Taylor had a 1.15 WAR. Juan Soto 6.24 and Marte 1.01. Played in 33 more games than Vientos. Yeah, so Baty was 4th on the team, just behind Alonso and above Nimmo, but played in 25 to 32 less games. So would like to see him do this again next season. I think it's like encouraging. There are some fans out there that are like, yes, he is it. This is him. But I mean, weren't we kind of also saying the same thing about Vientos last season? So it's like, that's where it's, it's encouraging, but we also can't have what happened to Vientos this season happen to Baty next season. Like how we do that, I don't know. But Vientos had played in 9 less games than Brett Baty, but had more total bases, more RBIs, and more doubles. Just defensively, he's a humongous liability, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I saw there a couple times he made some really outstanding plays, diving plays. Do you just roll with Vientos at DH and you say to Alonso, hey, this is, if we make this deal, we'll give you, we will make this deal with you. We will give you what you want. You get next season, 2026, to really prove to us that 2025 was the outlier and the exception to the rule, and that you really are as good defensively as you think you want to be? Or do you say, like, hey, 2026 is when we begin, we have a plan for you to wean you off first base? It's just so wild. It's so wild that you can, essentially it's like Alonso's going to them and saying, okay, well, I still want the same amount of money per year as a DH. And the Mets are like, no way. Like, in order for you to get that money, you'd have to be playing first base and you'd have to be good at first base, which you're not. So in my eyes, it's like, this feels like your window to win. We have like next season, and then do they even try to platoon Vientos this year at first? I guess not. Do you platoon Vientos and Alonso at first and at DH? So it's like, okay, Vientos at first, Alonso DH, Alonso first, Vientos DH. Is that the plan if you do manage to re-sign? Can you sell Pete on that first and foremost? I mean, after what happened last offseason, maybe Pete is like, all right, I don't want to go through that again, where it's like I'm expecting another team to swoop in and be like, yeah, sure. Mets Muse at Mets Muse threw this out there, and this is where we start to talk about Mark Vientos, and everyone's like, oh, it's a foregone conclusion. He's not a part of the future, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, how soon we forget. Mets postseason hits leaders since 2000, so in the 21st century. You have Todd Zeile, Piazza, Alfonso, and Benny Agbayani, and Francisco Lindor, all tied at 16 postseason hits, tied for 4th. You look at that list, and it's like Mike Piazza, long-term staple, Alfonso, long-term staple, Lindor, long-term staple. Zeile had a couple good seasons. Agbayani, I feel like he just had the one good season. Then at 3rd, you have David Wright with 18. tied with that. This freaking list. Tied with David Wright at 18 is Mark Vientos. And then you have Daniel Murphy at 19 in that one outlandish 2015 postseason. It's wild to think that you can be on that list. But then again, I mean, Murphy, we didn't pony up for Murphy. He goes to the Nationals, lights it up the same path that Mark Vientos will follow, where it's like he'll just find success somewhere else. How Mark Vientos' postseason numbers stack up against other Mets since 2000. So Vientos played in 13 games during that 2024 postseason. Did we call him up for 2022? I don't think so. He's first in RBIs, 14 RBIs. Second with 18 hits. Obviously, we just talked about that. Second in home runs with 5, and third in extra base hits with 7. We had one of the best postseason runs in Mets history in 2024, and we're ready to run him out of town. I don't think I'm ready to run him out of town. I guess that's what I'm getting at here. I was very excited about Ronnie Mauricio this year. And maybe this is a case of just like, well, it's his first season back from tearing his ACL. I know most baseball fans don't want to hear me talking about football, but you look at a lot of the football players that tore their ACL, the next season that they come back, they miss all the season that they tore their ACL, long rehab process, they come back the next season. They're not the same. They're playing at like 75% of what, they normally play at. So that's what I'm assigning and chalking up for Ronnie Mauricio in 2025 is like, he had the injury, missed all of whatever, comes back the next year, not quite where we'd like him to be. But those two dudes, man, I said it in the last episode about the Mets. Vientos and Mauricio is just like, holy shit, do they want to be on this team? Doesn't seem like it. And, part of I can empathize with that, where it's like, things are not going your way. And then maybe you start to hear the chatter and the buzz about, shouldn't be in the lineup, shouldn't be on the team, deal them, trade them. So hopefully and they're young guys. So hopefully they can get past that and get back to what made them so special. Because I would like to see them as part of the team and contributing. Because I know we've seen it. We've seen flashes. We've seen, at least from Vientos, how sustained that success can be over the course of a season and into the postseason. This is a wild stat. Would you believe me if I told you that Kodai Senga had the second highest WAR among pitchers behind Edwin Diaz? What? Very crazy. I'm in the future. It's October 2025. I'm talking to you. You're back in March 2025. And I say, hey, season's over. I'm not going to tell you it's October 14th because then you'll get sad. But season's over. Spoiler alert, we did not make the playoffs. But Kodai Senga had the second highest WAR behind Edwin Diaz. You'd be like, yeah, okay. Okay, but also Kodai Senga got hurt multiple times and had to get sent down to the minors where he got shelled. Wait, what? Okay. That should give you kind of a hint of where things turned out in 2025. Past me. Nolan McLean had the fourth highest WAR and only pitched 48 innings. That's wild, dude. But also, gives you hope. I don't think Tong's going to start out the season in the starting rotation next season. I think you give him half a season, maybe more, to iron some things out down at AAA. Sproat I feel like he has a very good shot of making the opening day roster and being part of this starting rotation. McLean's like a lock. Sproat, I'm like 50-50 on. Tong, it's like I would prefer to see him continue to develop at AAA. And then barring another disaster in terms of injuries, he would be a nice September call-up. Clay Holmes led the team in wins, also had the most losses. He was second in innings pitched. Peterson was first. Like I said before, it's not great when those are career highs for both pitchers. In Clay Holmes' case, 90 to 100 more innings pitched than he's ever thrown in a season. Like, yeah, you're gonna encounter some issues when you start hitting that kind of level that you've never hit before. Ryan Stanek pitched in the most games and had a WAR of -1 with an ERA of 5.30, and I think everyone pretty much everyone is out on him. I don't want to be out on him. I just think when he is on, it's so captivating and mesmerizing to watch him. Just feels like he has the it factor. But then there are times where this season he just it just unraveled and blew a lot of games for us. Sean Manaea gave up 13 home runs in 15 games, which is very uncharacteristic for him. We lost A.J. Minter, Danny Young, Griffin Canning. We didn't have Brooks Raley for most of the season. Reed Garrett got hurt. I think that we should make a concerted effort to bring back Tyler Rogers. I think of all the trade deadline acquisitions, he was the best. Can we re-sign him? I think. Was he that much of an upgrade over Jose Butto? Was Tyler Rogers really worth what we gave up? I want to say yes, but maybe not. Nimmo, Marte, Soto, Vientos, and Alonso all had negative defensive WAR from least to most. Soto is interesting because it's like, how do you have such a high fielding percentage like we just talked about? And when we're going over individual fielding, he's 5th in assists and 3rd in fielding percentage, but yet he has a negative WAR. My guess that comes back. I don't know how that happens, but okay. So we got to get better defensively, and you have to figure that if we do re-sign Alonso, that he should be making the transition to DH. Does that mean you move? You really? It would be nice to not have to wait until like a month before the season starts to re-sign Alonso. And so that you have a plan in place and you can actually work on that plan for months leading up to the season instead of like a week leading up to the season. It'd be nice to let's get the deal with Alonso done quick so that we can go to Mark Vientos and say, hey, we want you to be the starting first baseman. Brush up. Let's get you good. Let's get you reps. Let's get you working on your first base skills. That would be the approach there. But this could be a case where Vientos does get dealt. He's the odd man out just because of his defensive shortcomings. In terms of who is under contract for 2026, obviously Soto in right field. Nimmo's in left through 2030. He'll be 37 when that contract is up. Be a free agent in 2031. That's really interesting, dude. I mean, I look at how he runs and how he throws now. I can't imagine him at age 37. Tyrone Taylor is under contract. He'll earn 3.0, or he did earn or will earn $3.02 million. Maybe that's what he earned last season. And then he's in arbitration for 2026. And then he'll be a free agent in 2027. Jose Siri was earning $2.4 million. Was supposed to be in arbitration for the next 2 seasons and a free agent in 28, but he was DFA'd. So he's now an unrestricted free agent. In the infield, obviously, we have Lindor locked up. $34.1 million per year through 2031, free agent in 2032. McNeil at second base. He's 33, and the team there's a team option in 2027. And he'll be earning $15.75 million. So a big year for Jeffrey McNeil. Can he get back to where he was in 2022 when he won the batting title? I don't see it. Maybe missing so much time and with that injury really fucked with him, but you would have to think contract year, essentially. Maybe he does one out. Hard to tell with Jeff a lot of the time. Pre-arbitration, usually the average is $758,000. First year arbitration is $2.59 million. Second year is $3.59 million. Third year arbitration 7.7, as is the fourth year arbitration. Luis Torrens made $1.5 million last year. He'll be in arbitration for 2026 and then a free agent in 2027. Alvarez is in arbitration. Kodai Senga making $15 million in 26 and $15 million in 2027. Oh, baby. Got to figure it out, Kodai. Got to stay healthy. Figure it out. Sean Manaea, $25 million per year for the next 2 years. Be a free agent in 28. That's another guy. It's like the odds and probability of all those guys just severely underperforming or getting hurt is borderline unheard of. So I can't imagine that happening again in 2026. That's why I have such high hopes for 2026, and then I'm fairly confident and positive about 2026 because like there's no way that this could happen in back-to-back seasons. Clay Holmes will earn $13 million in 2026 and has a $12 million player option in 2027. David Peterson earned $4.62 million in 2025. He'll be in arbitration in 2026, free agent in 2027. By my estimation, he should be earning around $8 million, which, worth it. Tyler McGill earned $1.98 million in 2025. He'll be in arbitration in 2026. I think he'll earn maybe around $4 million, $3 million, $3 to $4 million. I can't see him earning $8 million, but is he worth $8 million? If he pitched every month like he pitched in April, yeah, he's Mr. April and Mr. May, and then all comes crashing down after that. Austin Warren, who I didn't even know was on the fucking team, apparently is our relief pitcher that's under contract, but I can tell. $785,000 last season, so I don't know if he'll get a bump in pay. I can't see him getting 2.59 mil, so maybe he'll get 785 again. I think I briefly looked at his numbers, and they're actually not bad, so it must have been an injury. I don't know what happened there. Nick Madrigal is also another guy that apparently is under contract. So those are the guys under contract, or the top guys that are under contract. In terms of free agents, we mentioned Marte. Starling Marte is a free agent. This is one of those situations where the guy was earning like 20 some odd $20 million. Is he really going to take, like, what kind of a pay cut is he willing to take to stay on the team? What's his market value? It's going to be 37. 7.8 million. 1 year, 7.8 million. Tell you what. I might not hate that. 1 year, 8.75 million. In terms of comparisons to others who have signed similar contracts, Andrew McCutchen in 2023, Justin Turner in 2023, JD Martinez in 2023, Edwin Encarnacion in 2018. His averages in 2024, 2025 are mostly like significantly below what those other players were achieving across most major metrics. He has like 35% less RBIs per game, way more strikeouts per game. His OPS is lower, and his WAR is like 14% lower. So I'd think about it. I wouldn't completely rule it out. I don't know, though. 37. Gun to my head, I had to say no. No, thank you. Cedric Mullins, thanks, but no thanks. Of course, he'll probably sign with someone and like have a renaissance. And then Jesse Winker is DH. Man, talking about falling out of favor with the staff and with, and I have to say with the fan base. They're coming over in 2024 at the deadline, giving us so many big moments in the latter part of that season into the postseason, and give us a couple moments when he was healthy in 2025. But what was supposed to be like he misses a couple weeks turned into you just missed the rest of the season. And I think Mendoza expressed his frustration with how he was rehabbing. So I think maybe you do have to move on from Jesse Winker. It stinks, but you see what happens. Like, the best ability is availability. We can't have guys getting hurt. So Pete opted out of his contract. He had a player option for $24 million. He opts out. Sleeper Mets. This was on October 11th. They posted on X that Pete Alonso is expected to seek a contract of at least 7 years per the New York Post. When we were talking about in the last episode, when we were recapping September and the collapse, there was some reports that he was looking for 6 years, 179 mil. And I was just like, yeah, dude. Sure. Yeah. Okay. 7 years? It's only one more year. But, like, does that mean that, okay, yeah, 7 years, you're the DH. Is he going to balk at that? I hope not. We cannot go through what we went through last season with him. I say that, easier said than done, but, like, you don't want to give an ultimatum to the guy, but it's like, dude, you're the first domino. And last season, he was the first domino, and it didn't fall until like, what was it, a month before the season, I think, or something like that. It was just so late. Was it late in February? Right before spring training? It was just like way too long, and it just fucks with your plans. Like, let's just get that out of the way so that we can start to strategically plan for how we attack the rest of the season. I say sign him, and then I like this whole weaning off plan. And it's just a matter of like, okay, is it going to be Vientos or someone else you sign in free agency that comes in at first base? Better defensively than Alonso, average-ish, maybe slightly below average offensively. I'm trying to think of a good comp there. Remember Doug Mankiewicz? Was that his name? In terms of starting pitchers, free agents, Frankie Montas is a player option for 17 mil. I don't know if he did take it or if he's not going to take it. I would think he would take it because I don't know what kind of market he would have. Like, what kind of market would he have after the absolute Hindenburg of a season that he had last year? I don't know that he had many teams clamoring for him. You know, his market value is 1 year, $6.48 million. So I would think that he would take that. He would pick up his player option. And then you just have to figure and think like, okay, that last season sucked. I was dealing with injuries, but now I get to come back and prove my worth and prove that I'm not just worth 17 mil, but more. So it's a prove it year for Montas. Griffin Canning. This is a hell yes for me, dog. Like I don't know how long the timeline is to come back from an Achilles, so I definitely need to look that up. But I would think that you would definitely want to bring him back. 0.7 million is the market value there. I'd have to look into, what kind of performance starting pitchers have after tearing their Achilles. Is it the same as someone coming back from a torn ACL? Possibly. I don't know. So you're looking at was having like I don't want to say career season, but he was pitching some of his best baseball before tearing his Achilles. So, and he's 29, so he'll be 30. I say bring him back. It's just how long is the Achilles timeline? Achilles recovery timeline beyond 12 months. So we lost him in June. So we wouldn't get him back until probably All-Star break 2026. Shit. I don't know. At that cost, if it truly is just under 5 mil and you get him for half a season, I am for that. I think he's proven himself and shown enough for me to take a risk and gamble on that. Dan Bartles at Dan Bartles 2 on X had an interesting Mets-Tigers trade proposal. In his proposal, he said the Tigers would receive David Peterson, Brett Beatty, our number 3 prospect, Jet Williams, our number 4 prospect, Jonah Tong, and our number 8 prospect, Ryan Clifford, for left-handed pitcher for the Detroit Tigers, Tariq Skubal. Oh, baby. That is one hell of a proposal. And that's a lot of players to give up. 3 top 10 prospects. Beatty, who some think is on a very steep, high upward trajectory. I don't know that necessarily we're going to put him in the same kind of light as David Wright. Are we? Like, is Brett Beatty's 2025 season akin to David Wright's 2004 season? David Wright came up in 2004, but then his first breakout year was 2005. Yeah, 2004 he played in 69 games. David Wright had 2.2 WAR. 2005 he was 4.8 WAR, 160 games at age 22. I feel like Beatty's older than that. He appeared in 108 games in 2023, only 50 in 2024. He's age 25. Not exactly the same. That's a lot to give up for Skubal, but Skubal's so good. Oh my God, dude. At all major leagues in WAR the past 2 seasons. Led the majors in wins last season. Led the majors in ERA the past 2 seasons. Led the majors in WHIP, in walks per 9, strikeouts per walk ratio. Won the Cy Young last year. 2-time All-Star. 28 years old. Ooh, baby, that's not exactly a slam dunk trade, especially because it feels like Peterson is, all-star this past year. Feels like he's kind of coming into his own. Like he's now pitched. I pitched a lot of innings last year. He's expected to pitch a lot of innings this upcoming year. Brett Beatty's on the rise. You feel like that's going to be your dude at the hot corner for the foreseeable future. Tong show you something. It's just Williams and Clifford. Oh man, that's a lot. But does that get you over the edge? He gets hurt. Like fucked. And then relief pitchers that are now going to be free agents. Edwin Diaz had a player option for $18.5 million. I think he's going to probably opt out of that. Do you want to bring back Ryan Helsley? Hell no. Is it a hell no? Is it a no or a no? He pitched well, towards the end there. It's just way too many games where he did not and cost us games. So it's like, who are you going to get? I think that's a big gamble. I want to see what his market value is. I think he earned like $8 million last year. Worth every penny. No, definitely not. So Helsley's market value is 3 years, $40.9 million. He would earn $13.6 million per year. A comparable contract would be Edwin Diaz when he got 5 years, $102 million at $20.4 million per year. Signed that at age 28. He signed that in the 2021 season? 2021, 2022, 20. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at a lot of his metrics compared to those other guys that signed, and he's like anywhere from 20 to 36% below what those other guys are. Like Josh Hader's contract in 2022, Tanner Scott's contract in 2023, Raciel Iglesias' contract in 2020. So he's about 15 to 24% below in terms of performance those other guys. That's hard to justify, but again, I think this is why they did it. It was insurance for if Diaz opts out and then doesn't want to sign. Diaz is 31 years old. What do you know? What is Diaz's market value? 4 years, $73.4 million, average salary of $18.3 million. He's outpitched other players that have gotten similar contracts. So in terms of he's given up less walks per 9 than Hader, has a lower whip than Hader, lower ERA, similar amount of games pitched than the past 2 seasons compared to what Josh Hader did in 22 and 2020. So we'll see about that. I'm leaning towards no on Helsley, but it's like if you lose Diaz and Helsley, ooh boy. Greg Soto, do you bring him back? Kind of feel like no, right? Tyler Rogers, I think that's a definitive yes. You want to bring him back. Ryan Stanek, I guess, is a no. Drew Smith has a club option for $2 million. At that price tag, why not? I mean, everyone keeps talking about how he's got so much potential, but it just always feels like he's giving up the big hit. Brooks Raley has a club option for $4.8 million. Hell yeah, bring him back, dude. Brooks was one of the few guys in the second half from out of the bullpen that you could really rely on. I think he only had 1 or 2 outings where it was like, fuck. Mike Janella at Mike Janella on X said the 2025 Mets season really was the 2024 Mets season, just completely in reverse. Yep. Bill Madden 1954 at B Madden 1954 on X said Steve Cohen's $341 million Mets have just been supplanted in the playoffs by the Cincinnati Reds, whose payroll is $119 million, a $222 million differential. Can't think of a more embarrassing season by a New York baseball team. Well, 2023 was also fairly embarrassing, considering at least 2025 Mets gave you 2 to 3 months of really good baseball, where it's like, this is one of the best teams in franchise history. 2023 Mets just never. It was just like, we're waiting and we're waiting and we're waiting and we're waiting. I guess fans were demanding that Steve Cohen speak or provide a message after the season, and he did. He provided an apology. He said, Mets fans everywhere, I owe you an apology. You did your part by showing up and supporting the team. We didn't do our part. We will do a post-mortem and figure out the obvious and less obvious reasons why the team didn't perform up to your and my expectations. We are all feeling raw emotions today. I know how much time and effort you have put into this team. The result was unacceptable. Your emotions tell me how much you care and continues to motivate the organization to do better. Thank you to the best fans in sports. So, apology accepted, Steve. I mean, come on, guy. Injuries, dude. It's just like, you can't have that many injuries and think that you're going to survive it. Unless you're the Dodgers, I guess. Because, the Dodgers had, even in last season and into the postseason, had so many injuries across their starter rotation. But they figured it out, found a way to win. And now they're up 2 games in the NLCS. Best of 7. Taking 2 in Milwaukee. Oh, my goodness gracious. So, the fans did their part for sure. We broke attendance records this season. I think we were one of the top attendance records in baseball. It seemed like pretty much every weekend game, every Friday night and every Saturday game, it was like the stadium was rocking, just full. It felt like a playoff atmosphere. And for the players, and I think that definitely helped. We had one of the best records at home this season. And it's like, can the team figure out how to win without that kind of support on the road? That's what separates you from men from the bullies. Unbiased Mets fan at the Mets X said David Stearns' trade acquisition since taking over as the Mets president of baseball operations. Paul Blackburn, 6 ERA and 48 innings pitched, DFA'd. Huascar Brazoban, a 4.01 ERA and 83 innings pitched, up and down from AAA in 2025. Yeah, for the most part, Brazoban was tough. There were like maybe less than a handful of games where he showed up and helped us out big time, but in the majority of situations, it was not great. Tyler Zuber, only 2 innings pitched, DFA'd. Phil Maton was the best acquisition, 2.79 ERA before running out of steam in the playoffs, helped transform the 2024 bullpen and should have been retained, and I agree. That's not the first time we've done that. We kind of, and hand up, I admit, I saw what happened to Chris Bassett in 2022 down the stretch, and in this final couple starts of that regular season, and then in the postseason just decompensate and decompose, and I was like, move on. And then he obviously goes to the Blue Jays, or did he go somewhere else before the Blue Jays, and is pitching really well. So Matt Maton was in the regular season one of our best relievers, and just came up short in the playoffs. I think it was worth giving him another shot, another chance. He says that Ryan Stanek had a 5.25 ERA over 72 innings pitched. Horrendous acquisition who shouldn't have been retained. I disagree. I think based off of his 2024 performance, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't bring him back. Jesse Winker had a 693 OPS, couldn't stay healthy. Yep, true. Jose Siri barely played due to injuries, so bad in 15 games that he was DFA'd. Yeah, the stats, we did the stats last episode on Siri, and it was just like, holy smokes. Gregory Soto had a 4.70 ERA in 23 innings pitched. Ryan Helsley had almost ERA over 7.5 in 19 innings pitched. Tyler Rogers, 2.08 ERA in 26 innings pitched. Struggled a bit with runners on, but good acquisition overall. So yeah, I would like to see us bring him back. So far, Stearns is batting 2 for 10 on trade acquisitions. Not a ton has been given up in those trades, but still terrible though. Yeah, not exactly a great look. Mets said, relayed this rumor from John Heyman. It said the Mets could have gotten Garrett Crochet, but it would have cost them Brandon Sproat, Jet Williams, and potentially more. So solid. Some pretty solid freaking numbers down in September, at least. 7 2/3, win. 8 innings, win. 6 innings, win. 6 innings, win. 7 innings, win. Oh boy. 6.3 WAR with the Red Sox in 2025. Led the American League in innings pitched at 205.1 innings. Also led the majors in strikeouts, 255. faced 814 batters, 11.2 strikeouts per 9, which led the American League. 24.6, 28.6, 28.6, 20.6. So yeah, he signed with the Red Sox through age 32 season 2031, and his salary increases if he finishes in the top 10 in MVP voting. So yeah, he's only 26. Oh my God. Could have gotten Garrett Crochet for when though? That must have been prior to 2025. Would like to know more details on that. All right, so let's do player grades real quick. I forget who did this. Grimace at Cooked by Grimace. He gave out player grades, and I was gonna react to him. Luis Angel Acuna got a C. I don't know. I'm gonna say C minus, D plus. I mean, yeah, the stolen bases were huge. Defensively, good. But just giving us absolutely nothing at the plate. So I'm gonna go C minus, D plus. Pete Alonso, A plus. I think a lot of people would disagree with that. I'm hesitant to give him an A plus. I would give him an A minus. Francisco Alvarez is a C. I would go so far as to say C minus, just because and it's really outside of his control. I mean, the amount of injuries that he had, especially to his hands, were really tough. But the ability to, after being demoted, to come back up and to go on a bit of a heater was good to see and encouraging. It's just like we're now like we hope that he could duplicate what he did in 2023 and 2024 and then again in 2025. And it's been 2 seasons of like not quite getting there. So I'd say C minus, but if he's healthy, I mean he's obviously a huge boost emotionally in terms of energy and stuff like that, and you can't discount that. He did have a 2.1 WAR, which is the best of his career in only 76 games. So maybe he does deserve a C, and it was just a case of like couldn't stay healthy, and then that one bad stretch where they had to get demoted. But in terms of like offense, one of his better, if not his best season offensively. Surprising. I don't know why I always looked at 2020. I guess it was just because of the power output, the 25 home runs that I saw, that it really made me think that, because the 721 OPS kind of stands out to you, but like the 209 batting average is pretty bad. So yeah, he did have his best season offensively in 2025. So I still want to go with a C minus there. But again, I think that's because he was hurt so much. Brett Beatty got a B plus. I would probably agree with that. Borderline A minus. My God, if he was able to finish out the season healthy, who knows? Like if he comes up with a big hit here or there and is able to get us into the playoffs, I think that becomes an A minus for sure. Huascar Brazaban with a B. That's a disagree from me, dog. I would say he's more of a C plus. Griffin Canning was a B. Disagree there. I think he was more of like a B plus. There was a stretch there where he was like one of our best pitchers, if not the best, unless I'm misremembering. Yeah, dude. I mean, he was 7-3 through 16 starts with 3.77 ERA. So, I really like those numbers. I would say it was a B plus. And if he was able to do that over the course of a full season, you're looking at an A minus, bro. Skip those two. Go to Edwin Diaz, A plus. Interesting. I don't know. A plus to me is like, he was an all-star, top 10 in win probability added. Still can be shaky here and there, so I'm gonna go with A. To me, his 2022 season was an A plus. Reed Garrett was a C. I think if you were to just take his first half of the season, if you were to just like copy and paste that into the second half of the season, he's an A minus, B plus. But having the precipitous downfall that he did in the second half and then getting hurt, C makes sense. Halsey's a D. I would go so far as to say D minus. And would have been an F if it weren't for the last 2 to 3 outings that he had. Clay Holmes, B+. All things considered, pretty good, for sure. Francisco Lindor got an A. I would probably say A- just because defensively. But, I mean, Jesus Christ, 33 season. You can't go wrong with that. So, I wouldn't. Okay, an A. But damn close to an A-. Sean Manaea got an F. And, yeah, I mean, that's... You can't be earning $25 million a year, be hurt for most of the year, and then come back and pitch the way he did when we needed him most. Just time after time coming up short. I think there was only like one outing, and it was in that piggyback game where it was like, all right, cool. This is nice. Not exactly what we envisioned for him this season, but we'll take it. Marte got a C+. Yeah, I'd say C. C+ is fine. Ronnie Mauricio, C+. I would disagree there. I would say it was closer to a C- D+. I think I'm still just really bummed with how, I don't know if something was going on with him personally in his personal life, but just the way that he was basically buried for a long stretch of time in the second half of the season where he was just not called upon at all. So I would say C- D+ there. Nolan McLean, A+. I agree with that. Jeff McNeil, B. I disagree with that. I think he's more like a B-, C+. Tyler Morgill, C. I'd say he was more like a C-, D+. AJ Minter, no grade awarded, but he was pretty much an A when he was healthy in the limited amount of time that he was appearing. Frankie Montas, F. Agree. Cedric Mullins, F. Agree. Brandon Nimmo, A. I mean, he put up career highs across the board, so that's kind of hard to argue with. Might go A- there. Just because I think, thinking about like clutch hitting, things of that nature. David Peterson, B-. Tough, dude. Especially for an all-star. I mean, he really pitched poorly in the second half. Brooks Raley, B+. I would go so far and say maybe even an A-. I really liked how he pitched coming back from missing so much time. Tyler Rogers, A-. I agree. Kodai Senga, C, which feels high, but again, it's that weird situation where it's like second highest WAR among pitchers for the Mets in 2025, but yet ended up in AAA at the end of the season that couldn't make his way back to the starting rotation. So I would say that's like a D+ D for me. When we needed you most, Kodai. Jose Siri, F. Gregory Soto, C. I would go C-. Juan Soto, A+. Yeah, I mean, that's hard to argue. I agree with that. Brandon Sproat, B. I agree with that. Ryan Stanek, F. Yeah, I think so. Tyrone Taylor, B-. I feel like that's a little high. That might be recency bias based on like what he was able to provide when he came back from the injury, but the fact that he had to split time with Siri at first, got hurt, then tried, couldn't outplay Cedric Mullins. Yeah, that's okay. I would say C+. Jonah Tong, B-, not bad. Mark Cientos, C+. Vientos. What a conundrum, dude. What a quandary. Hard to tell. This is where someone who earns way more money a year than I do would have to figure it out. Looking ahead, so David Stearns gave his postseason press conference when the season was over at Mets South Florida. Diane M on X had some takeaways. I wasn't able to tune in and watch it, but any poor defender on this team very well could be gone. Ooh, baby. Some bold words. My guess is that that's taking aim at, we talked about the guys who had negative defensive WAR. Nimmo, somehow Soto, Alonso, Vientos, Marte. It feels like Vientos, Marte, I just don't see him coming back. Although, pretty decent defensive replacement in left in terms of like arm strength, in terms of like sack fly opportunity. You can throw a guy out at home. I like him there. Is that worth $8 million a year? Ooh. And then Vientos and Alonso, yeah. Mr. Alonso needs to come with terms. He is a DH, especially if he wants to come back to terms that he's a DH. Will he do it? I think he will. Really tough. If you thought that you were going to get a deal based on you demanding you play first last season and you had a better season defensively than this season, I can't imagine you going to the market this season and being like, First base, anyone? And I don't think you're just going to get that kind of love. So, yeah, let's hope that he comes around on that. And, what is the mathematical formula on that in terms of market value, in terms of average value per year? In terms of just from an offensive standpoint, he's top 5 to top 10 across the board in most power hitting metrics. But when you don't have someone, when he's not in the field, how much of that salary, how much can you chop off that annual value or total comp, especially over 7 years? I don't know, man. I mean, Nelson Cruz made a healthy living as a DH for a very long time. So, Sleeper Met said, relayed this David Stearns quote on Kodai Senga. Quote, Kodai Senga has had 2 inconsistent and challenging seasons in a row. We know it's in there. We know there's potential. Can we put him in ink as making 30 starts next year? That would be foolish. All right. Well, feels like the starting rotation is now wide the fuck open. When you have 20 starting pitchers, you have none. Is that the expression? It's time to step up, Kodai. You now are not going to have McGill, right? He's having Tommy John. Griffin Canning has that long recovery timeline. If you do decide to resign him, you're not going to get him back till maybe All-Star break, I would think. That leaves you with Peterson, who struggled to give you a full season. Clay Holmes, who was in his first full season as starter. Nolan McLean. So at this point, Nolan McLean's your ace. He's your number 1, which is kind of wild. Like, is Manai your 2? Biggest off-season questions. There's 5 of them. This is from Anthony DeComo with MLB.com. Let's get into it. Will the offensive core remain intact? And this is largely related to Pete Alonso. If the Mets let Pete Alonso walk this time around, they won't find a slew of ready-made solutions on the open market. Josh Naylor of the Seattle Mariners, 2.2 WAR in 2025, profiles as the best available option. Again, Naylor, 2.2 WAR, Alonso, 3.4 WAR, or 3.1. He was above 3. Of course, Naylor has a lower, I want to say his market value is like 14 to 15 mil a year. Look it up. 3 years, 45 million. Yeah, 15 mil a year. So he would come at half the price of Alonso, and you're sacrificing about a 1 win. Yeah. When you put it that way. DeComo says enough shine has come off Mark Vientos' reputation that moving him to first base no longer seems like a slam dunk fallback. A trade is perhaps the best avenue to replace Alonso if the Mets don't re-sign him. Who would you trade for? Whomst amongst us would you trade for? That is the $1 million question, or the $30 million question. Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, and Brandon Nimmo are all under guaranteed big money contracts. Do you move on from Jeff McNeil, who has 1 year and $17.75 million remaining on his deal, but they've resisted chances to trade McNeil in the past? Yeah, I mean, how many years in a row has Jeff McNeil's name surfaced in trade rumors? And every year we've been like, no, hell no. But it's funny, with each year since 2022, it's been like, no, all caps, bold, exclamation point, to no, lowercase, period, to no, lowercase, question mark. Like, maybe. I think they're more open to it now than they've ever been. And I don't think you would have a lot of people arguing with it. I mean, like, yes, the story would be so much better if you were able to keep him around and see him be a major integral player and contributor to a world championship. Yes, that's the plan. That's the idea. That would be, it's a little bit of a fantasy at this point, but if it allows you, that's where you have some flexibility, right? Because you have so many options in the infield with Vientos and Mauricio and Acuna and Beatty that McNeil, if you trade him, that allows you to possibly pick up a starter in the rotation, possibly pick up a closer if Diaz decides to move along. So, yeah, I think he's one of the bigger trade pieces. I mean, I don't know though. Like market value couldn't get it higher than it was in 2022. You probably would have got something then, but I'm for keeping Alonso, but I understand that the argument is not as strong and not as solid as once you see his WAR being just 3. You only lose a win, and you pick up 15 mil. 15 mil could go to a starter or a bullpen arm. And you get Josh Naylor. I know. I'm talking myself out of it. Number 2 biggest question of the offseason: how will the Mets rebuild their bullpen? Well, Edwin Diaz has the opt-out, of course. Stearns dodged a question regarding his appetite to resign Diaz, but his track record suggests he doesn't favor handing big money deals to relievers. Ryan Helsley, Tyler Rogers, Gregory Soto, and Ryan Stanek will become free agents. AJ Minter and Brooks Raley are likely to return. Fuck yeah. Reed Garrett and Daniel Nunez will spend next season recovering from Tony John. That sucks. We could backfill with arms within our own organization. We did call up late in the season Dylan Ross. He did not come in or make an appearance, but he's our number 20 prospect. So we're going to have to go out there and get multiple bullpen arms. If Diaz leaves, this could be New York's most complete bullpen overhaul in years. Dun, dun, dun. What will the Mets do to their rotation? This is the third biggest question of the offseason. Comes down to whether the Mets need to make a big splash, executing the type of all-in deal they simply didn't have at the deadline. Sandy Alcantara should still be available on the trade market, for instance. I just do not see the Marlins giving us Sandy Alcantara. I do not see that happening. Joe Ryan or Pablo Lopez are potential options, but the prices aren't going to be much cheaper than those that gave Stearns sticker shock at the trade deadline. So convicted was Stearns in his desire to stand pat on the rotation that, when asked about it last week, he replied, quote, "I think our fan base would actually be perhaps even more upset if we had made some of those moves." What? If prices again prove too high for Stearns' taste, he could break character and invest big money in a top free agent like Dylan Cease, Framber, Valdez, or Michael King. Otherwise, the club will be putting serious faith in incumbent options. So McLean, Sproat, Tong, Christian Scott is a name that kind of we got lost in the mix. It's flying under the radar. Sean Manaea, Clay Holmes, David Peterson, Kodai Senga. Ideally, you chalk up 2025 as just a fluke season for Manaea. He comes back and is back to, even if he's not back to what he was in 2024, we just need better than he gave us in 2025. Christian Scott was really good. I would think that it would be really nice to get him back in the mix. And Peterson and Holmes, it's like, all right, now you know what a full season's like. And now how do you prepare to give us your best over that time and not fade and lose stamina and steam, once you get into the later months? Senga, dude, what a wild, volatile situation for Senga to go from like Ghost Fork, Ace. I mean, he was our best pitcher in 2023, which is crazy. And to now be like, well, he's going to have to prove it over 30 starts. Christian Scott, dude, that's gotta be honest, forgotten man. Forgotten. People will say that the Soto contract really fucked us because it's like, and this is why I was a little averse to going out and signing like a Shohei Ohtani or a Soto, is because it comes with such a huge price tag that you really limit yourself in terms of what you're able to do to fill in the blanks and the gaps in other areas. And is this why Stearns was brought in? Because it's like, hey, we want to sign Soto. We know it's going to cost us an arm and a leg, and we need to be frugal and economical with all our other decisions. And this is where you come in, and you have to be like a bargain bin hunter, dumpster diver to find us hidden gems and whatnots. So as a Mets fan, you don't want to hear it, but it's like, I don't think do we have it within us to, Marte off the books helps. Who else could be off the books? Possibly Diaz, but that's like, ugh. So I can see why a lot of people are don't want to re-sign Alonso because it's like that's a lot of money for just a DH, and you now don't have the ability to go out and to get a top flight starter or someone to come in and replace Diaz. Yeah. How can the Mets improve their defense? It's question number 4. During his end of season press conference, Stearns pointed to run prevention as the area the Mets most need to improve. Run prevention is two-pronged: pitching and defense. We already talked about pitching, and now we're talking about the defense. We were below average defensive unit in 2025, as evidenced when we said 6th worst in defensive efficiency. Soto, Alonso, and Nimmo all produced negative outs above average totals. Oof. Replacing Alonso with a better defensive first baseman would be one way to improve team defense, but it would likely come at the expense of offense. If Carson, I'm not going to pronounce this right, Bengi, he's the Mets' number 2 prospect, number 21 overall, can make an impact in center field next season. That could be another easy fix. Still, the Mets are more than a tweak away from becoming an excellent defensive team. They'll canvass the free agent and trade markets for alternate solution. I didn't realize that Carson Bengi was our number 2 prospect. You know, you hear so much about Jet Williams and previously Drew Gilbert. So Carson Bengi, right fielder, center fielder, and pitcher, 6'1", 184, bats left, throws right. Born January 20th, 2003. Our 19th overall pick in 2024. He played 24 games at AAA in 2025. He played 60 games at A+ ball, 32 games at AA, and then 24 games at AAA. At AAA, he hit 178 in 24 games. Struggle there, so I don't see him coming up right away. 22 years old, so feels like that could be a late September call-up. I don't expect him to compete for the center field job. 5. This is the last of the biggest offseason questions. What will Stearns and Mendoza look for in a coaching staff? The Mets parted ways with the majority of their coaches, including pitching coach Jeremy Hefner and hitting coaches Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes. Of particular intrigue is the replacement of Hefner, who not so long ago garnered accolades as one of the best young pitching coaches in baseball. This analytically driven front office will have specific criteria in mind. They will likely want someone collaborative who can fit into their existing pitching program. Yeah, I mean, Hefner was a carryover from the previous regime and administration. And my God, we preached and praised him for turning around the likes of Manaea and Severino to the point where we re-signed Manaea to a massive contract. Surprised that we didn't try and bring back Severino, and Hefner was kind of able to replicate what he did with Severino when it comes to Clay Holmes, I would think. Not exactly the same level, but admirable to say the least. That one was the most surprising. I mean, all the other ones, yeah. I mean, we retained Antoine Richardson, which makes sense given the stolen base numbers and the success we had there. That's tough for Hefner. You got to feel for him. It's like, dude, we had so many fucking injuries. What do you want me to do? But everyone was calling for it on social media. It was like, heads got to roll, heads got to roll, heads got to roll. You cannot miss the playoffs with this payroll. And with all the talent that you have, you can't miss the playoffs. And so decisions have to be made, heads have to roll. And unfortunately, Hefner gets caught up in that. People who have been calling for Eric Chavez's job for so long, it's like that was I don't want to say no-brainer, but it was a long time coming. Curious to see what Mendoza and Stearns cook up there, for sure. So when Steve Cohen became the owner, he said he wanted to win a World Series within the first 5 years. I think it's now been 5 years, and we have not. Spoiler alert, we have not won a World Series championship. It does feel like we're at least the atmosphere, the environment, the feeling is that we have the capability to win a World Series with him as owner. The confidence level is higher than it ever was with the Wilpons. 2015 was just kind of like came out of nowhere in terms of getting the World Series. There are a lot of really great elements in place to get us there. But when he took over, he did say he wants to be the Dodgers, the East Coast Dodgers. We're not the East Coast Dodgers. We're not even close to the East Coast Dodgers. So we have, in terms of payroll, yeah, we are very close to the Dodgers in payroll. but we are not seeing and reaping the same results as the Dodgers. So I think that's where we, as an owner, it's a bold statement to say we're going to win a World Series in 5 years, but you like that kind of brashness. You like that kind of confidence that, like, yeah, I have a goal and I have a vision and it's 5 years and we're going to do it. And he's certainly trying. He's certainly putting forth his best foot and putting forth his best effort. But we are not close to being the East Coast Dodgers, other than payroll. So how do you shed that payroll, or how do you rework that payroll? We'll see. But I think let's take a look at the Dodgers payroll just real quick. Got Mookie Betts earning about 30 to 35 million for the next, holy shit, 7-8 seasons. Got Yamamoto making 14 to 16 the next 2 seasons, but then he's making 30 plus million for so many years after that, but he's only 26. Ohtani's making like 28 mil a year, which is I don't know, that's wild. Freddie Freeman's making 27 million a year. Will Smith is making around 12 to 16 mil a year. Blake Snell's making 27 mil a year. Tyler Glasnow is making more than 32 mil a year. Teoscar Hernandez is making less than 20. Yeah, dude. I mean, this is like, I don't know how the Dodgers are fucking doing this. When I think about like Teoscar Hernandez at age 32 is making less than Starling Marte made this past year. It's like, Pete Alonso asking for 30 mil a year means that he needs to be at Mookie Betts level, and he's not. Kodai Senga is making as much as Yamamoto. Alonso making more than Shohei Ohtani. Oof. Yeah, so I think if you're, Jesus Christ, Pete, like, why? This is where I'll never, and this is why I never could be an agent, because it's like you look at someone like Betts or Ohtani or even Freeman, and you see what they're able to do. Why wouldn't he take 27 million? Like, if he opted out from 24 million, could you say to him, okay, well, you want 7 years? We'll give you 7 years, 26 million a year. Because, I mean, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone that would agree that he is better than Freddie Freeman, that he's better than Shohei Ohtani, and he's not as good as Mookie Betts, is he? God damn you, Pete. I love you so much, but you basically need Brandon Nimmo to play better than Teoscar Hernandez. Is he doing that? I don't think so. You also think about like guys like Max Muncy. Like, Max Muncy's 34. He's been in the league 10 years, but he just always seems to, like, he's always getting clutch hits. He's always making good defensive plays, and he's making $14.5 million this year. You know what I'm saying? Kiki's another guy that's like, Kiki Hernandez is making like $6.5 million a year, but that guy is always coming up big. He had a .1 WAR this year, only played in 92 games, but I feel like he's always making plays in the friggin' postseason. It's batting .346 this postseason. Jesus Christ. OPS of 875, yeah. That's where we differ, I think. It's like our highest paid players are making more than the highest paid players from the Dodgers, yet the Dodgers' highest paid players are outperforming our highest paid players. And then your contributors are making less than our contributors, but outperforming. You're not quite getting the value. Maybe this is the end of the core. I wonder if that Nimmo contract is going to come back to bite us, or if we are going to have to eat that. The Lindor contract you feel good with the Lindor contract. You feel good with the Soto contract. The Alonso contract's going to be tough. Can you point to someone like Shohei Ohtani and be like, are you Shohei Ohtani? Can you pitch? Can you get a Kiki Hernandez-esque player? Can you get a Max Muncy-esque player? Is Brett Beatty, can he be a Max Muncy? Can Jeff McNeil be a Kiki Hernandez? Like, no. That's why, yes, I would love to be the East Coast Dodgers, but we are not there yet, and I don't know that we're that close. That being said, I still have confidence for 2026. There's something about it. Makes me feel good. So I think it's because you got to believe. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Talk to you next time. Adios, muchachos.